Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. We're going to get started here tonight. We have 100 live viewers already. It's been about a week. I've been busy. I didn't get to put a video out over the past, 4 or 5 days or so, but nevertheless, we're back. The content will resume. We didn't really have a lot to cover because there wasn't really a whole lot in the news, and still, there really isn't a whole lot to cover, but we're still going to cover what we can. We have more updates about 2024. We have new updates on the Tucker Carlson situation, Fox leaking two Media Matters potential videos that a lot of people think are edited or look a little bit weird in their resolution. We're going to cover that for sure. And we're also going to cover some of the recent developments. Bud Light plummeting in sales again, like this is confirmed. And even the people that were earlier saying that they were doing just fine, now when the sales reports are out and they're dropping by 20% here in this report and 11% in like the first week, but they're dropping even more now than they were initially. And now they're trying to backtrack and put other like pro-conservative marketing out that's not like explicitly pro-conservative, and it's just not working for them whatsoever. Nobody's liking them right now. Everybody's laughing at them. But also Donald Trump, we have new 2024 updates that we're going to dive into at the start of the stream before we get into anything else, including the updated RCP average, which again, we know polls, we're going to be taking them with a grain of salt, regardless of what they say. But nevertheless, this notion that Donald Trump is DOA in 2024, that he has zero chance at defeating Joe Biden, and whatsoever, the narrative that the Republican establishment is trying to force feed down people's throats. They're trying to intimidate people who actively oppose their candidate, that they are trying to force feed as this compromise, and not everybody fully vibes with that. And then they're getting antsy because then you look at the primary polls and it's not looking all that great for anyone other than Donald Trump. I mean, for a while he was falling. DeSantis was gaining after the midterms. But now Donald Trump has seen a surge. He is skyrocketing. And even after the whole indictment thing, that was supposed to end him for good. Oh, well, nobody's going to want to nominate somebody under investigation. Everybody knows the investigation's BS, so it doesn't matter. And what do you see? You see him skyrocketing in the primary polls, which were actually, for the most part, right in 2022. I mean, there were some exceptions. Like, yeah, you did see Arizona. You did see Pennsylvania. They underestimated McCormick, and in places like, Ohio, they were not always that great for much of the cycle. But what we do know is they were probably more accurate than the general election polls in most states. And the key word is most, because it wasn't every state. And he's surging there. And even if you want to take a ridiculous margin of error, he still wins. He's winning Iowa. He's winning New Hampshire. He's definitely winning South Carolina, especially because you have two very prominent politicians in the state announcing presidential runs, and they're running campaigns that are likely going to take votes away from somebody like DeSantis. And then down the stretch, you look at it and you see the trajectory of this presidential election. As it stands right now, Donald Trump is the favorite, and he is, he's not always acting like he's got it in the bag, even though he does, because yes, he's punching down. And at times, is that always going to be effective? Not necessarily. And I don't think hitting any candidate in this race, whether it's DeSantis or anybody else, any of the other clown car from the left, is going to work or help you gain support, for the record. I don't think it's going to cause, I think he could do pretty much anything, and he's not going to lose a ridiculous amount of support. So he does have a high floor. He could test the waters, see what attacks works and what attacks don't. But as of right now, he is in a very strong position, and everybody knows it. He's going into the lion's den. It's funny because CNN is arguably being nicer to him than Fox is right now. And maybe that's because they want the ratings. But Trump, back in 2015, 2016, when he was raising his profile and trying to add to his movement, what did he do? He would go into the lion's den. He would go into CNN. He would do their town halls. They were not very friendly to him. I mean, maybe a little bit more friendly than they are to him right now. But still, the ability to step into the lion's den, go to CNN, go to these liberal networks if they are willing to platform him and express his vision for the nation for 2024. Yeah, I mean, that's what he has to do. And it's funny. So you're seeing a lot of like the DeSantis people saying, well, look at him. He's going to CNN. So this proves he's just a liberal. But then they say like he can't win independents, but also he's like not conservative enough at the same time. So their ideology or the strategy surrounding Trump doesn't seem to add up. It's extremely incoherent. And as a result, they're like floundering all over the place and they're losing. They're starting from a very low point. They're going to have to effectively punch up, but they're not even punching up effectively. So what they are doing is they are going down swinging. They're trying to take down the entire ticket. And I think a lot of these people, not like the voters, because there are people out there, maybe somewhere in the live chat who like Ron DeSantis, or maybe they just think that Trump is past his prime or whatever reason. They don't pay as much attention to all the details. I get it. It is what it is. I don't think everybody who says they support DeSantis over Trump has bad intentions. Of course, we know that. But also, I will say this, there are a lot of people and leading influencers that do. They're very vicious people. They dox people nonstop. They're paid operatives in many cases and have been exposed as being paid operatives because they're trying to sow division in the Republican Party. And it's still not working to a certain extent. But in terms of a general election, I've always said you need to have a united party regardless. If Donald Trump is on track to win this nomination and all these polls have him in the 60s and Ronnie D is down there at 23%, despite getting an abundance of positive press. And even though that he has got his pack and they're actually outspending Trump right now 2-1, and they're wasting those resources that could go to Trump in a general, and it's not working. They're just exhausting resources for the sake of dividing the party. And that's dangerous. That is very dangerous. It's a dangerous game you're playing ahead of a very critical election. Every single election that takes place has been more critical than the last. And we do know this. And we said, oh, maybe in 2020 after the result, we said, okay, maybe a silver lining would be that the woke left, for example, is going to take their foot off the gas. And we saw the complete opposite thing happen during the Biden administration. And it seemed like, oh, well, things got worse under Trump. Culturally speaking, true, but had Clinton won, they likely would have gotten much, much worse. And now we see what's going on right now under Biden. And then you look at it 4 years from now, who knows what's going to happen? You're going to have Dark Brandon unleashed because he's got 4 years to do whatever he wants. And if you're going to divide the party enough, yeah, Republicans still probably retake the Senate given the map, but I mean the House. And you know how many weak Republicans there are in that Senate, and they're going to do everything they can to push through a lot of bad things for our nation. So do keep this in mind. So that brings the question of, okay, well, can Trump win? And I've covered this a lot, but we have data that we haven't analyzed, which are basically just the polls, because they always point to these polls. Trump's approval rating is this, percentage that's extremely low. He can't win, but he's winning every single poll. He's winning literally every single poll that has been released nationally. Now, we could talk about the state polls, because then they'll say, well, the state polls that have come out recently show Trump underrunning Ron DeSantis. And it's like they do, but they're all from like one firm. And that firm is clearly aligned to create a certain narrative. If we see more polls from the quintessential pollsters in the states that have even been inaccurate in 2022 or 2020 or whatever, then we could look at those. I get it. But you see one new pollster that's probably even more inaccurate, that's designed to be an internal, that's designed to set up a narrative. I don't exactly buy it. But the national polls that have been out, which gauge the approval rating of the president, they gauge where the nation stands. First of all, they were actually on point in 2022. They actually underestimated Republicans in the average by 0.3%. And they have Donald Trump winning the popular vote. You can see this on the screen to my right here. They have him winning not just the Electoral College, but the popular vote. And keep in mind that Donald Trump, given trends in certain states, given his unique coalition, he can win, or he could lose the popular vote by close to 5 points and still win the 2024 election. This is something that not a lot of people talk about, but even then, the only pollster that even comes close to that is a Biden +3 poll, a Biden +3 pollster right there from the Wall Street Journal. And that's what you get. And that's the outlier. And yeah, Rasmussen's likely an outlier as well. I know they technically are likely voters, but I mean, that's a very hard thing to gauge right now. Likely voter screens that could impact the race one way or another, probably not by a ridiculous amount this far out. And the likely voter screens in 2022 got awful. But that's enough for like the, intricate details within the polls. What we know is the narrative has been set. Trump cannot win. The only candidate that can win is Ron DeSantis. And then you look at the actual polls, and then Donald Trump is winning the popular vote. Now, they also have DeSantis winning the popular vote, which is interesting. And I think it would be intellectually disingenuous if I just threw that out or discounted it. But it's also important to note but DeSantis's coalition is vastly different than Trump's to a certain extent. Like, yeah, he's more electable in safe blue states. He might do well with like Italians in New York and New Jersey more so than Trump, or maybe he'll do better in a county like Orange County, California, where there's a lot of pull, or yeah, maybe even in a state like Florida, where both of them would obviously be able to win easily. But if you're the sitting governor of a state, you become the nominee and you pass a lot of popular legislation, you're going to lock down that state and run up the margin there. And that we know. But it's like, yeah, when the states that actually matter for the Electoral College, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, because Ron DeSantis could win back Arizona, he could win Georgia, he could hold North Carolina, Texas, he could add Nevada and still fall short of 270 electoral votes. Maybe you could say 269 would be enough to win. And then you could say, well, maybe he'd get Nebraska second. But even then, I don't even know if Don Bacon's going to get Nebraska second in 2024, given the trends we've seen in that district, which are going to persist long after Donald Trump, by the way. You can't extrapolate a trend map from an incumbent governor's reelection bid where he runs up against somebody who's virtually like, if you looked at this from an outside perspective, he was like trying to throw the election, if anything, given who he picked for his lieutenant governor, or a Castro supporter, didn't raise any money, ran a Mastriano tier campaign in the state of Florida. Turnout overall was also a little bit lower than 2018 even. There's a lot of factors there. Not going to discount DeSantis's election victory being, solid in size. Of course it was solid. Nobody's denying that. But also when you look at the big picture, you look at all the facts about this, it's like that doesn't make him more electable in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. And if you're running and you're dividing a party and you're going to just cut the party in half, what's going to happen? Especially in a state like Wisconsin, where a lot of those low propensity voters are like only Trumpers. And maybe they would turn out for DeSantis under a certain circumstance, like the GOP gets their act together electorally, or maybe if like he didn't run in a primary against Trump, the man who like inspires them to turn out the most and cause a rift and cause a division. It's like, maybe if that's the case, then yeah, they would vote for Republicans. They're going to have to turn out for Republicans in the future. And a lot of the Republican strategists and the Republican establishment don't seem to grasp this, and they keep wanting to chase the voters they're not going to get ever again. They'll blame Trump for losing them, but it's far beyond Trump. It's far beyond Trump. Trump was somebody you could say who accelerated the suburban shift, but that's been baked into the cake for years. In some places, for example, Romney was doing worse than McCain. And in 2016, we saw what happened. And then 2020, 2022, even among the most rhino candidates that Republicans put up, they even underperformed Trump in many suburbs. And even entrenched incumbent governors didn't do that well compared to Trump in these suburbs in Texas, in Atlanta. So it is much deeper than Blump's personality turns off suburban independence. It's much deeper. And the Republicans sat up there, and you saw Ronna Romney McDaniel trot herself out to the public the other day and say, well, we did an autopsy report. And what did it say? We didn't get independent voters. And it's like, you didn't, because you didn't get them to turn out for you, the ones that typically are right-leaning, the independent voters that did turn out. It's not like these are pure independents who would have voted for the rhinos or the more establishment Republicans had they turned out. It's a lot of your own base did not show up because of various reasons, because of mechanics, because of funding, you name it. That's not even Donald Trump's fault. I mean, if anything, you could blame Trump for not getting involved enough in some places, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, like especially Pennsylvania, where he seems to be the only Republican that's even capable of getting close in the state, that we've seen for years, with the sole exception of the Republican performance in 2010. which that was short-lived. And even 2014, they lost the governorship by a lot. Now, granted, the governor that was the incumbent had an approval rating that rivaled Bush's in 2009, but that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say here is there's a path. Trump's not DOA. He's not uneluctable. It's a lot deeper than, oh, we have to get these independents on board. You do have to get independents on board, but turnout also matters. And Trump had a very razor-thin election in 2020. It was 43,000 votes across 3 states. And that was when he lost independent voters, according to the exit polls, which are, you got to take with a grain of salt. But he lost independent voters by like 15 nationally, according to the exit polls. And let's say he does that again, or he replicates that, which, again, I don't even know if he will, because Biden's much less popular now. And if Trump runs a campaign that is relatively on message, if he runs the campaign where he's, we saw him in East Palestine, when we see him talking on the Nelk podcast, when we see him talking at CPAC, when we see him talking at his rallies, not on Truth Social at 4 a.m., because I get that. That's a little bit, some of that stuff might not exactly help him in a general election. But again, you do pivot before the general. Trump did the same thing in 2016. Had he said every crazy thing he said then now, like, people would be hammering the uneluctable narrative even more than they are right now. Even more so. But still, like, this notion, oh, he's DOA, he can't win, not true. And you look at the independent factor, and we were talking about that before I got a little sidetracked, and it's like he's losing them by 16, barely losing the election. Biden's a lot less popular now. He's polling better with those voters now than he is then, believe it or not, in most national polls. I don't personally see it as a problem. We could talk about 2022 all day long. I'll just refer you to the autopsy documentary that I did, which was a lot better and a lot more comprehensive than Ronna McDaniel's 3-word explanation for the midterm underperformance that comes out 6 months after the midterm disaster, by the way. Absolutely ridiculous, a disgrace, disaster. She should not be in that position. And we know she's not going to help Trump either. And I think Trump knows that. That's why Trump didn't endorse her for her reelection bid to the chair. He didn't endorse the opposing candidate. And of course, you have the people that say, oh, well, Blump was on her side because some people in his corner canvassed for her or something. And it's like, well, he also had people doing that for both of her opponents, which, again, you said were objectively worse. So I don't want to hear that talk from these people, because they're trying to use this and gaslight the base to supporting somebody that they know is even more controllable, is even more underwhelming at times, even if we're focusing on those flaws that Trump has. At least Trump is receptive to the base. Trump sees what the base is saying. He sees what the base is saying about the way he handled his 2020 campaign regarding crime. And now he's changing his rhetoric. They booed him at the rallies when he was shilling the jab. Does he shill the jab anymore? Not nearly as much as he used to. I get it. The ego is going to get in the factor of the whole jab thing. Oh, I made it. And some people like it. So, I'm going to have to talk about it here and there. He shouldn't talk about it here and there. But still, when you look at his track record on Big Pharma, when you talk about the fact that he engaged in those price controls, he was trying to take them on it here and there. And that was with a lot of people in his cabinet that were a part of the swamp. And he's already doing that, and he's already getting things done. But when the base is criticizing Trump, he's listening more so than most. And I think that DeSantis, compared to a lot of career politicians, sort of understands what the base's interests are. But I mean, even then there's a blind spot. And when he gets to Washington and you see the people already backing him and the people that are going to be in his corner, yeah, I don't know, day and night. There's a reason why Bush in 2000 was the non-interventionist candidate. And then 3 years later, he had troops stationed all over the world. That's the way it is. People might not be able to wrap their head around that if they weren't like around or haven't read books about the time, but he was the non-interventionist candidate. He was that non-interventionist choice between him and Al Gore. I'm not saying that he wasn't always a globalist. I'm not saying that it wasn't all a facade, but what I'm saying is even the way you campaign doesn't translate to how you govern. Even Trump, you could look at examples, and I've covered them extensively on this channel. So that's what I'm saying. But you have all these people, a lot of populists, even self-described populists, that will come out and say that, oh, we need to support DeSantis, and oh, Trump can't attack somebody like McCain, even though McCain is like the antithesis to a right-wing populist within the Republican Party. And these are like old attacks Trump was levying at McCain. And now they'll be like, oh, it's about Arizona. It's like, yeah, it's baked into the cake. what Trump said about McCain recently has been objectively correct. The amount of energy that they spent on this guy during Trump's presidency, hailing him as a hero, absolutely ridiculous, especially because these were the same people that spent years comparing McCain to, in the 2008 campaign trail, they said he's comparable to George Wallace and Hitler and all these people, all these boogeymen they're trying to make McCain into. He's trying to make him like the sequel of a lot of people in history who were unsavory, etc. You name it. And that was their end goal with him. And to an extent, it worked. And they were never punished for that, of course. But, oh, Trump, he says one thing about McCain that's objectively true. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Even though McCain spent more energy attacking Trump first, even though McCain's family waste their entire lives trying to bring down Trump, and in many cases have failed, by the way. It's another supporter of Ron DeSantis, Meghan McCain. Yeah, whatever. That shows you the caliber of people that are supporting Ron DeSantis over Trump in 2024 in the political class. That should tell you everything you need to know about who's astroturfing his presidency and not to buy the lies that are coming from these people. But still, the eluctability lie, it's there. Polls are not accurate. That's true. But national polls tend to be more accurate than most. I agree that we're probably not going to see the same poll average right now that we're going to see 5 months from now or 10 months from now or after the primaries. But what I will say is this notion that Trump can't win or that he's too unpopular to win, when a lot of his unpopularity were people who were saying that they were favorable of him 10 months ago before this astroturfed anti-Trump campaign started. It kind of tells you that a lot of it is soft disapproval and a lot of people very well could just come back. And that's what it comes down to. And you talk about foreign policy, you talk about the economy, every single issue. Trump has that upper hand over Joe Biden in a federal presidential election. And I mean, it's true, except healthcare, of course. And that's another problem. And that's going to be a problem with no matter who the Republicans put up. And it's probably going to get worse with somebody like Ron DeSantis, who has been a part of that like fiscal hawk crowd in Congress for years and years on end and talked about cutting Medicare and Social Security ad nauseum and actually voted for it. I mean, that's not something that's very eluctable. And he's not really being hit for that right now, other than Trump hitting him for it. And it's not helping him in a Republican primary. And what that also does is it allows Donald Trump to go out there and reestablish himself as that populist candidate economically, the way he was viewed as in 2016, but maybe not so in 2020 when all he did was rant about socialism, which again, haven't seen much talk about socialism from Trump recently. Haven't seen much. I mean, the radical left Democrats, even then over the past couple of months, I haven't seen nearly enough of that. So he's listening to people like us. People around him are listening to people like us. And as a result, he's stacking W's. And we know that. And that's the way I see it. I think the only critique that I'd have is probably don't attack anyone from the left. Economically is fine. Attack him economically from the populist side, of course. But when it comes to social issues, don't attack from the left. But nevertheless, there are people that do have their priorities. What is this election about? What do we define this election about? Is probably going to adopt positions of the other people in the race who, or at least rhetorically speaking, who happen to raise issues that people care about. For example, when it comes to education, when it comes to woke capitalism, Trump has released policy videos talking about that. And yes, he's attacked DeSantis on them specifically from the left at times, but nevertheless, when it comes to his policy that he wants to get through, he does seem to be on the right page regarding that. But when it comes down to everything DeSantis has done and what he's trying to run his campaign on, people need to understand that this election that's coming up, you're not going to be able to go out there and run on COVID. And you're not going to be able to run on war with Disney and expect to win a general election on that. Just like you can't run a campaign on the 2020 election in 2024 and expect to win. And I will say that as well, because you can't. But you also, these are the same people that will say that claim that DeSantis is going to win, not just the primary, but also the general, because, he was ahead of the curve compared to some other Republican governors, but not all, on the issue of lockdowns, which again, I've given credit where it's due. But still, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to run a campaign when there's a lot of issues people care about. Who says that the issue that they care about are the lockdowns right now? Who says that out there in the general public? Even if he was ahead of the curve on them, which again, he has a mixed record on them. Trump has a mixed record on them. They both have the same position on vaccinations. DeSantis shielded it, 1,600 times? 1,600 times in 2021? That's probably a lot more than Donald Trump did, objectively speaking. Granted, DeSantis did make more media appearances, but you see how the narrative is set and they run with it. But even so, accepting their narrative as true, that Trump failed and was an abysmal leader on the issue of COVID. And if DeSantis was like the greatest ever who never locked the state down once and Florida was free and all this and that, which again, not entirely true, but let's say that that's true. Running on that in 2024, bearing like a new virus being present that they're trying to reinstitute lockdowns for, which I hope would not happen, but you never know these days. Like, yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to win on that. What do we care about foreign policy? World War III. Biden's taken us right there, antagonizing China with Taiwan. They're likely going to take Taiwan because Biden's weak, or they could, maybe not in Biden's first term, but in Biden's second term. And when it comes to Russia, they're taking Ukraine, obviously, but now we're pushing Russia into the hands of China, which would not be something good because now you're creating two of the largest enemies you possibly can create. Now, I don't like China. I obviously don't. They're an adversary, especially when it comes to trade. But my main problem is the fact that they are taking advantage of us. I think that we should have a good relationship with as many world leaders as we possibly can. Of course we should. And Donald Trump was aiming for that. He had a pristine foreign policy, something I think even a lot of the DeSantis heads can't really disagree with. And then you look at where this country's headed. When it comes down to that issue, Trump's foreign policy, he's top-notched. He's unmatched. And that was even with the Pentagon lying to him about how many troops were in the Middle East and taking a lot of this intel that he didn't have any, obviously, the correct intel, given the fact that you had a lot of bad people in our government that were there long before Donald Trump was there in charge. But still, you look at World War III, not saying World War III is necessarily going to happen like in the next 4 years or so, but we're headed down that pathway if we keep going on the trajectory. We don't need to be getting into another endless war regardless. We're basically involved in one right now with Russia, Ukraine. We're sending millions upon millions and billions, actually, of dollars there every other month or so for something, for some aid package that they clearly don't really have any business getting from us. And then you look at what Biden's DOJ is doing. We're being invaded on our southern border, and they could be cracking down on illegal immigration right now, but they're wasting their time and their energy suing the state of Tennessee because they don't allow genital mutilation of children. So you look at this administration and what their priorities are. They are all over the place. They're not in tune with the American people. And obviously, when it comes down to Donald Trump, he's somebody that has a track record when it comes to this, especially foreign policy-wise and on the border, of putting America first. He built 450 miles of wall. Some of that was replacing old fences, but obviously that's a problem. You're going to have to do that regardless. And on top of that, when it came down to even legal immigration, cut it by 50% during his presidency. When it came down to the border crisis that took place, the caravans, he put in the Remain in Mexico policy. He squashed it. He's got the track record on pretty much all of that. That's what this election has to be about. And when it comes down to it, you look at Donald Trump, you look at his track record, you compare it to Biden's on a lot of these issues. And Trump has that upper hand right now as we speak. And Biden's not that popular. And I'm not saying Trump's guaranteed to win, but I'm saying if you unite the party behind him, he'll win. If you don't, and you waste time spending double the amount of money he has trying to defeat him because you're spiteful, because you're bitter for whatever reason, because you want the GOP of old, you want 2004 to come back when it's not going to come back, yeah, guess what's going to happen? You are going to lose, and then you're going to blame Trump when only you have yourself to blame. So that's what it comes down to. All right, we're almost 30 minutes through the stream. I think that we could cover some other things first. I'd like to quickly get to the Tucker stuff, and then I'd like to read super chats, and then we could talk maybe a little bit about the whole Bud Light saga because it's getting worse, and a lot of people seem to be interested in it right now and keeping up with whatever's going on with the boycott. So We will get into that. But we see this right here because Tucker Carlson is now under fire. He's under fire because of the fact that he had some leaked audio that was released by Media Matters that Fox sent to Media Matters. By the way, Fox sent to Media Matters. It wasn't like they obtained this like illicitly or anything. The only way they got this is because Fox, the employer of Tucker, and the network that is supposedly the nominally conservative major news network in this country, they have decided to collude and collaborate with a far left, supposedly they call themselves like a watchdog organization, but all they do is try to slander people on the other side, and they get all this backing and they get all these donations, whatever. I mean, they've done it to pretty much every commentator, even myself included. I think they included in some article, and they threw out all these lies, and it's just dishonesty, like pure dishonesty, the most pure of like any dishonesty, just twisting words, twisting things, twisting the meaning of certain things. And it's like, really, this is what you could come up with? It's this? Like, who exactly would believe it? Just intellectually and morally bankrupt type stuff. So Tucker Carlson had a little bit of trash talk to say to them, but you look at these, I'm going to show this one because this is like the most notable one that's going around, but they released these leaked audios of like bloopers from his show or whatever. I don't even know how they got them unless it was from Fox News, which is exactly where it was from. So here is what Tucker said. And like they released this thinking that it's going to make him look bad. And honestly, I think it just makes him look funny. It makes him look relatable, if anything. He attacks Media Matters like a regular guy. He's just doing a little bit of trolling. We're going to play the clip.
You wouldn't? Okay. I'm not, you know what? I'm not qualified on that score, I will say. I thought his girlfriend was kind of yummy. Just kidding. Just kidding. In case this is being pulled off the bird. Yeah, the bird. Hey, Media Matters for America. Go fuck yourself. That's the first thing I want to say tonight. Second thing is totally kidding. I don't even know what his girlfriend looks like. And if I did, I would not find her yummy.
So he's just having fun off camera, basically. And apparently he knew then and there was a chance this was going to go to Media Matters. And it did go to Media Matters. But this makes him look funny. It makes him look relatable. Like, is this like their next plot to bring him down? Because I think they know they can't bring him down easily. He's going to do something. He's going to do something that is going to be still notable. He's still going to be relevant. He's going to have less of a reach. I know it's not a net positive that he's gone from Fox, but still, we'll see. Now, I will say this, because a lot of people in chat are saying it, and I was going to bring this up before the show started anyways, at some point during the show, because it kind of, some people will say, is this a deep fake? And it seems like a weird thing to deep fake. I don't know why. The audio quality, though, is it's suspiciously bad. It's suspiciously bad quality. It doesn't look real.
You would.
Like, is this something that Tucker would probably say? Like, I would, yeah, probably. But, like, even if it is AI generated, even if it is fake, like, this makes him look relatable. This doesn't make him look bad at all. It makes him seem funny, makes him seem genuine. It's like, okay, so wait, this is the unfiltered Tucker? This is the real Tucker? Well, if that's the case, then I think a lot more people are going to like Tucker right now because Tucker's about to get a lot more real and a lot more unfiltered. Now, if it is a deep fake, I would have expected Tucker or somebody close to Tucker to come out and say that it wasn't. And maybe it is. Maybe it is AI. I don't know. But either way, I don't care if it is because it's funny. It makes him look better than worse anyway, so I don't care. And I think they could have gotten a lot more on him if it was not AI. So it could just be bad quality. I don't know what it is. And there's like a video of him talking, another video that was released of him talking to Piers Morgan. And I mean, that one was like better quality, I guess, seemed a little bit less AI generated. So I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. Tucker is doing just fine. He's going to do just fine. Yes, it's a net negative. He's gone from Fox. But again, now Fox is collaborating with these far left, supposedly watchdog groups that slander people just so they can bring down Tucker more. And it's not exactly going to work. So we'll see. But beyond that point, we have a lot to get to, including super chats. We are going to get to in about 1 second here. So let me make sure I can pull those up before we get to the super chats. Let's see. Okay. All right. So let me see if I could put them on the screen. Trying to put them on the screen so we can actually see the super chats, but I got to go all the way back up to before 9 o'clock. Okay, here we go. Olivia Williams with the first super chat says, Hogan, presumably Larry Hogan, cannot win a Senate race. It's like saying Bashir or Kelly can in their states. I assume that's like Laura Kelly of Kansas, which again, give it 10, 15 years, maybe that would change, sadly. But I mean, that's a whole another topic. Also, can any senator pull a Susan Collins in 24 and outrun by 18 points? I don't know. I mean, Maine is a weird state. I mean, Alaska is also a weird state. There are a lot of states that still have weird voting patterns. And that would be what John Tester would probably need to win. If Manchin runs again, he could outrun Biden by 18 net, but he's still going to lose by a ridiculous amount because West Virginia is West Virginia. So maybe he could, but it's not going to amount to anything. And that's with Democrats wasting a lot of money and energy and resources on his race. They could put the worst candidate up, they'll win by close to 10. So that's what it comes down to. Now, Larry Hogan, if he ran as an independent in the future, I don't know, maybe. But yeah, again, nationwide elections or elections for federal office are a lot different than elections for statewide office. I think if anybody could do it, it would be Baker in Massachusetts, because Elizabeth Warren is just a disastrous candidate, a horrific underperformer. But even then, she probably still wins by around 10 over Baker, even if Baker ran as an independent who would still caucus with the Democrats and Republicans didn't even put up a candidate. And all those people are rhinos. They're not going to help us out in the Senate. We got to focus our energy getting rid of Mitt Romney as well. Maybe look into making a primary challenge happen in Mississippi. But other than that, I mean, I think we're pretty much set for the primaries of senators. When it comes down to the open seats, we have a little bit more leeway there. But let's see, Olivia Williams says DeSantis not running makes him seem scared of Trump. Yeah, and that's why I think he has to run at this point, because he looks weak because Trump's attacking him. But even so, he was going to run regardless, and now he's going to run to lose. And it's going to be a fire festival. It will be, and they're going to do everything they can to divide the party. And possibly they would be content with losing a general election to Joe Biden just so they can prove a point. That's what it comes down to. It's about proving a point. It's about getting Trump out of the way, because they know that Donald Trump represents the largest threat to the globalist order that exists. Not somebody who's been in Congress for their entire career and had at best a mixed voting record when it comes to those key issues. Obviously, you might say, well, DeSantis is more active in the woke fight. And I would probably agree with that. But that's just one issue that's probably better dealt with at the state level anyways, at least for right now. So, and again, Trump has also changed and adopted some of those positions to his platform already when it comes to banning sex change surgeries for minors, etc. So I'm not entirely sure where Ron DeSantis has the upper hand, other than, oh, well, you were a more vocal proponent of the jab, even though DeSantis was also a vocal proponent of the jab as well. And nobody talks about it. Everybody gives him a pass for some reason. If we care so much about that issue, which you obviously should, why does he get a pass? Why does nobody criticize him for it? Why aren't you supporting RFK Jr. for president? Because he seems to be the one that has had that, anti-jab, anti-mandate standpoint for his entire political career. Which, again, that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. But Maxwell JW says, do you think Trump will do at least one debate? Does his decision not to partake hurt him? I think he should do one. I think if he only does one, it's not going to hurt him. But I think that if he doesn't do any, it's not the best look for him. But even so, if he's polling at 70% by then, it might not make a difference, because he's likely going to easily win a primary in that case. But if he stays around the mid-50s, yeah, debate once. There's no reason not to debate. The moderators are going to be biased regardless. They're going to be biased no matter what. They were biased back in 2016. You don't want to look scared. You don't want to look like a coward. You want to be there. We saw Trump not debate in Iowa before the caucus in 2016. He lost. He almost got third place. He possibly could have won had he shown up at that debate. And so we've been down this road before. And I think a lot of people just need to understand, and he needs to understand, that it's a better thing to debate than not, even though I don't think if he doesn't debate, it's going to hurt him like a ridiculous amount, because a lot of his support is unmovable, and it has been unmovable. And it's unmovable for a reason, because I think a lot of people just don't buy what the media is saying. They don't buy the nonsense that comes out of the GOP establishment that says, okay, this guy's the source of all of our electoral problems. He's the guy that needs to get out of the way. When in reality, they're the ones that need to get out of the way or comply, because this is not their party anymore. It's really not. And they don't answer to the needs of the base. They could call those people the evil cultists the same way that the Democrats did throughout Trump's presidency. They're now adopting the full resist lib talking points. It's like, okay, well, why do they see Trump as such a wonderful leader? Why do they see him as somebody that they have unwavering support from? Like, maybe they need to look into things like that in order to actually understand what motivates people to turn out in certain places and vote, instead of crying every time you have an underperformance in rural Wisconsin and then blame Trump, even though Trump stayed out of the races to begin with for the most part. Especially, I'm mainly referencing the Supreme Court race that took place there. But still, Garrett Vranikar says, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Pennsylvania Supreme Court race? I haven't paid much attention to it, actually, but we'll see. It really depends on a lot of factors. The Pennsylvania GOP at least has been pushing for more early voting and to get their people voting early, which might help more so than not in some places, but we have a long way to go. And I think that these state parties are not going to be competent overnight, especially in the Rust Belt where they just haven't been. Bell Fagor says, just got a Joe Biden ad logging into the stream, rep single-handedly reelecting Biden. I mean, if Biden's going to be putting ads on my streams, they're not going to move anybody. It's just going to make people hate him more. And those are ads that could be placed on somebody who does gaming content or sports content or some apolitical content. So I'm not going to be complaining about it. It's a waste of his money. Bad people do exist. His thoughts on RFK v. Trump in general. I don't need to have thoughts about it because it will never happen. It'll never happen. So I just don't feel the need to talk about it. Like I said, the guy's intriguing, but at the same time, he has a lot of liberal positions, and his opposition to mandates compared to other Dems, or getting involved in Ukraine compared to other Dems, doesn't exactly move the needle enough for me to say, okay, I support this guy, because I don't. Now, do I support him getting as many votes as possible in the primary? Yes, because if, let's say, he runs and he gets 28% of the vote, or him and Marianne Williamson, crazy crystal lady, combined for 28%, Biden gets barely by 70 in the primary, then Biden has had the worst performance in a primary of any incumbent president since Jimmy Carter, when he ran up against Ted Kennedy in 1980. And that would be something that would be race changing in a way, because then it makes him look weak. He's going to be getting attacked from a lot more of his own party if that race becomes a little bit more competitive. And if Biden's if he actually does talk about things that do matter to Democrat voters and presents himself well and uses his last name to get far, and Biden decides to say, you are crazy, anti-vax, or whatever label they're going to throw out at the guy, which again doesn't even fully apply. I do think his stance on the jab is a little bit overrated. But it's okay, well then. So it's just not going to work out very well, because the majority of Democrats in polling have a favorable view of him, believe it or not. And he's already racking up celebrity endorsements. He's probably going to get the Joe Rogan endorsement, the Aaron Rodgers. He's already got the Aaron Rodgers endorsement. Not like that matters, but who knows what could happen. Has a good year in New York. A lot more people are going to start paying attention in a big primary state. I don't know. It's little things like that matter. Some people do attribute Donald Trump's victory in the Massachusetts primary being so wide because of Tom Brady, even though it didn't translate well to a general. Primaries, a little bit different. So Sam Madsen says, thoughts on McCarthy saying he supports Ukraine aid. I mean, honestly, it's something that we already knew, and I'm not happy about that. And he's going to be a flip-flopper on the issue, and it's not good. So he needs to be pressed on it. So it's not a very good thing. McCarthy, somebody who has been better than expected, but that doesn't mean he's been perfect. And he still needs to be held accountable when necessary. MH says the media's attempt to slander Tucker over the bloopers is the equivalent to the stunt that they tried to pull with Trump's locker room talk to a lesser extreme. Is this all they've got? Yeah, I mean, when the Trump tape dropped in 2016, I just thought it was funny. Like, I didn't think anything of it at the time. Like, I didn't see the media reaction right away. I was just like, okay, this is kind of funny. And then they say he's like a rapist. It's like, what? How do you gather that from what he said at all? Like, I thought it was kind of funny. Trump is just being Trump. He's a celebrity, you know? Like the notion that, oh, somebody says something off tape that like 95% of people have likely said off tape, whether in jest or whatever, it makes them unqualified for the presidency. It's like, get over yourselves. I don't care about Trump's personal life. And that's like another thing that the DeSantis people are going to try to throw out there. Oh, well, look at DeSantis. He's married and he has a kid and he's never gotten divorced and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, good for him. I'm glad. Trust me, I am. But like, I'm not looking for somebody to lead an exemplary life in that regard in order for them to become president. Like, I need somebody who's going to look out for my best interests and the interests of the American people, get us out of these wars, secure our border, cut immigration, put American workers first, help out the middle class. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for somebody to, live a perfect life, whatever. Like, yeah, okay, Obama had a nuclear family. So did Bush. So did Clinton, technically, for a while. That obviously was a facade. But you're looking at it, it's like a lot of bad presidents have had, and the left and the right, by the way, have had families that were relatively intact compared to Trump's. It's like, it just doesn't matter. But I agree. When it comes to the Tucker thing, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all whatsoever. Mr. Jimmy says, if Republicans flip back the Virginia Senate, what should Youngkin do? Pass through as much legislation as possible, because I don't know if he's got like a future in the state as a governor again or a senator. So he might as well try to terraform the state as much as possible in a way that would make the state more of a red state. So he would have a chance, or maybe also for his sake, if he does want to run for public office in the future at the presidential level, either at the top of a ticket, which again, he would not be my first choice ever, pretty much given the field that we could see in 28 or 32, or even just as VP, which I would be happy with him as a VP, then he should just, pivot to the right and pass through as much legislation as possible. And then at that point, he'd have that political capital while still being likable, wearing the vest and representing a state that voted for Biden by 10, but acting like he's the governor of Nebraska, which he already has to a large extent. And it's like, yeah, I mean, some of his comments are a little bit meh, but I mean, it's Virginia. So what can you expect? John Waffle H2P says, can Hung Cow win Virginia? Maybe. I mean, it's unlikely in a presidential year. I mean, that's probably like one of the states where DeSantis would outrun Trump. I'd say it'd be Georgia, Arizona, Texas, Virginia. It's not going to be by a ridiculous amount, though. It's not going to be like he's going to have a shot to win in Virginia. But maybe if he was the nominee hypothetically, which he's not going to be, Hung Cow would do better down ballot. But still, he's a solid candidate. Him running for Spanberger's seat might be more doable than him running for Senate, where we probably just aren't going to win that seat. And we have a lot of other seats we got to focus on too. So Sam Madsen says, does Trump win Nash County, North Carolina? Which again, North Carolina is going under a transformation because you had one state representative switch parties that gave the Republicans a supermajority. They're passing through a lot of legislation. This county, from the super chat, Trump lost by 120 votes in 2020, which again, there were 4 times as many third-party votes as that. He won it in 2016, but he did better percentage-wise in 2020. I think this is an interesting one, given where the county is. It is in Northeast North Carolina. Its population stagnant. I think he takes it. I think it's close, but I think he takes it, especially the way the state is moving. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure this is a county that voted for Mark Robinson and maybe even voted for Tillis. I don't know. It was probably close in that race. Maybe not, but I'm pretty sure it did vote for Robinson, who, by the way, is winning the primary by a ridiculous amount. So that's something to take into consideration. Let's see. Any other super chats? Polite Rude Guy says, we need to ban alcoholic drinks and cigarettes in the US. Good luck with that. It's not, you're never going to do that. Now, there are other things that can be banned, that could be banned. But again, you look at the popularity of at least alcoholic drinks. The cigarettes, maybe. I don't think they should be banned necessarily. It's like you saw people smoking back in the 1900s. Like, are they good for you? No. But I do think that this switch from like the cigar and the cigarette to like the water vapor that's flavored with some fruity flavor, it's like, that's just like it's emasculating, I should say. It's feminizing. Emasculizing is not really a real word, but I guess it is the combination of those two. But I will say, it's like, no, you're not going to do that. It's like, should you drink a lot? No, probably not. But, there are some things that you probably are never going to be able to legitimately outlaw, even if they are bad. But there are things that we can outlaw that are bad that we should look towards outlawing. Again, we already have taxes on those products. I don't know if that really affects people buying them a whole lot, but you look at other things that are causing much, much more destruction to the culture, to the society, like seed oils and diets, for example, or pornography or something like that. Yeah, those could probably be more outlawed, or in the case of seed oils, probably phased out more. Like, why are all these fast food restaurants cooking with these oils that they weren't even cooking with 30 years ago? Taco Bell used to cook with coconut oil, and that's a lot healthier. It's a lot healthier for a lot of things, your metabolism, body regulation, your skin, etc. And that's something that has been completely just amped up and is consistently defended even by a lot of these people on the left who you would probably traditionally expect to care about things like that and healthy eating and dieting, etc. So, I mean, if you're trying to ban stuff, I think if you want to start that process, I'd focus on the things that are not popular and are also more destructive than, oh, this guy wants to have a glass of wine at dinner, or maybe he smokes a cigarette pack a week or something, which, again, I don't think you should smoke, but it's probably better off, maybe not for your health, but if somebody was to smoke like a pack of cigarettes a week, than to constantly be vaping 24/7. We don't even know the results of like these vape studies or whatever. And I'm sure they're going to be partially paid off for, just like a lot of the tobacco industry was paying for skewed study results for years and years on end to protect the public from knowing the truth so they could increase their profit margins. But Gorgeous Mayhem says, who are the top 3 people that you think Trump is considering for VP? I don't know if I have a list. I'm sure that he's aiming towards, like I said, he's probably going to pick a woman. I just hope it's not going to be Elise Stefanik. I hope it's not going to be Kristi Noem. I hope it's not going to be a lot of the choices that are being floated, just because of the fact that they're not that good. They don't really add much to the ticket. Like, if he had Youngkin on his ticket, that might actually be like the olive branch you'd have to give, because you're going to have to do that regardless. You're going to have to get the party on board. As much as people will say, oh, pick somebody who's super based. And it's like, I agree that they can't get in the way of the agenda, but doubling down too much, you might say that's a cuck move, whatever. It's just a dumb move. You don't want to make a dumb mistake on the ticket and, oh, he's going to put MTG there. And then it's like, okay, now he's not getting the people on board that he needs to. It's a very risky move. And yeah, the base turnout does matter. Of course, don't pick somebody who alienates the base, but also don't pick somebody who you cannot extend that olive branch to, because you are going to need to sort of unite the party behind one candidate. Pence was perfect for 2016 at the time. He's not going to pick Pence again, and I wouldn't want him to, especially given Pence's foreign policy comments where he wants boots in the ground essentially in Ukraine. But we'll see who he decides to go with or who he decides to pick. We have a long way to go. Maybe somebody new will emerge from the pack. I don't know. Lee Zeldin would be ideal. Zeldin, that came out of nowhere, him endorsing Donald Trump over DeSantis. And the DeSantis people were up in arms, and they were the ones crying about disloyalty because Ron DeSantis campaigned with Lee Zeldin once, months ago. Nick H says the Blump will lose. Texas takes are getting annoying. Yeah, he's not losing Texas. And I'm not saying he's going to gain ground in the northern suburbs of DFW, because he's not. I mean, these places are changing a lot too. It's not even that, Trump is just too toxic or whatever neocon tagline they're going to use. I mean, Texas is growing. Like in Houston, maybe there he could turn a little bit of a corner, but I mean, in much of DFW, yeah, he'll lose a little bit of support here. But even then, you still see Republicans gaining in places like South Texas, rurals, etc., and then maybe turning a corner in the Houston area, which again, Harris County didn't swing right in 2020, but it trended right compared to the national environment. And it's yeah, he's not losing Texas. Biden is not popular whatsoever. In all those rural counties where you see Republicans at 85%, 90%. Somehow they keep getting redder, and somehow they do keep adding up. So, like I said, he's not losing Texas. Worst case, he wins it by 3, and then that will definitely be not a good thing, and it will sound the alarm and whatever. But when it comes down to Texas, he'll probably win it by the same margin he won it by last time. The map will look a little bit different. And Biden is not liked here at all. His approval rating in the state is in the low to mid 30s. And you might say Trump's is not the highest here either, but it's definitely higher than that. And I'm not saying he's going to win it by 10. I'm not even going to say that DeSantis wouldn't do better in Texas than Trump, but Trump is going to win Texas by enough to the point where he's not going to be dragging down Ted Cruz or something like that. Which again, Ted Cruz is probably going to underperform Trump because he's just not that likable. But even then, he's going to win. Allred is the Democrat candidate who's very overrated. You look at his electoral track history, underperforming Beto in 2018, where he won. 2020, underperforming Biden by 5, gets put into a much bluer district, goes up against a sacrificial lamb, even then underperforming Biden by 2. So he's not an overperformer. All he's got going for him is he's a congressman who played linebacker for the Titans that one year. Okay, congratulations. Couldn't even get out of the first round. And he's not going to get to the Senate. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's even though I'm not the biggest Ted Cruz guy, the guy's not going to lose to this guy. More likely than not, especially because the state party has a fire lit under them. They've been more attentive. They've registered more voters. They have woken up a little bit. And obviously, we're still very far from securing Texas as a state that's not going to go into the Democrat hands. I don't know the end goal or the end direction that it's going to go in. I don't know if it's going to become a safe blue state or if it's going to remain a red state or get redder somehow. But the trends are not ideal, I will say. You're not going to likely lose it until the 2030s at this point either. But maybe there is a corner being turned, and you do have a lot of conservatives that are moving to Texas. And that much is true. And the Republican Party there has been competent. And even though you have people with scandals who were unpopular, almost lost in 2018, 2022, which Republicans underperformed in a lot of swing states, actually overperformed 2018 by a lot. And that does speak volumes. Ken Paxton, I mean, a lot of people were saying, he'd put the AG slot in play, but didn't he win? He won by 10? Kind of turned a corner there. Juice says thoughts on a Trump DeSantis ticket so the Republicans can present a united front in the election. Honestly, I would support it. I would. I mean, that's the way it is. That would unite the party. It would also never happen, and DeSantis would never allow that to happen, and I don't think Trump would allow that to happen. But what it would do is it would make the DeSantis people get their guy in 2028 and beyond, and it would also unite the party behind Trump to the point where he's in a very strong position, probably a stronger position than he was approval rating wise, right after, I'd say right before the 2020 election within the Republican Party, because there you build the bridge back again. You have a ticket, Trump changes residency, and then he runs on a united front. 2028 rolls around, Trump doesn't even have to endorse him. He could eventually just toss him aside if there's a better candidate. And for VP, wouldn't do a bad job because it's a figurehead position, even if he does happen to have some neocon tendencies, which in Congress he did. Now, I also will say that the downside is he's not the worst governor compared to, what some of the like diehard Trump people will say, because of the fact that he would be replaced by their lieutenant governor, who has had a much, much worse track record, politically speaking, before getting into that lieutenant governor slot. So if you put Cuban Nikki Haley in the governor's mansion, even if you don't think DeSantis is all that as governor, objectively, it's going to not be ideal. Now, the state is basically safe, right? Because you have all these people moving there. I'm not saying it would start to unravel or turn back into a blue state. But what I am saying is you would have weaker leadership there if DeSantis did leave. I guess that's the downfall of that. But for the sake of a national ticket that would unite the party, yes, I would support it, because you're going to have to do that regardless. You will. Garrett Vranikar says, did you see Real Americans' video on potential GOP issues? I think they should run on environmentalism and go on the offense on these Dem-dominated issues. Well, I think that healthcare is a much more important issue to do that than environmentalism. And I don't think environmentalism is the correct word. That's the leftist religion of the environment, where they want to rapidly transform society just to lower emissions by 1%. And we can't do that. We can't have that. What we do know is that we could be conservationists. We could say, oh, we're going to tackle these issues. We're going to have clean air. We're going to have clean water. But it's going to be, based off of solutions that are going to work for everybody, not this whole Green New Deal nonsense. And we're going to, if we want to, deal with potential temperature changes or stabilize the graphs or whatever, if this is actually a problem that we need to address, then we're going to put Elon Musk in charge of it. Then we're going to have him send up his reflective mirrors from SpaceX into space. And then they're going to be able to regulate the temperature, which actually is a solution to the perceived climate problem that would actually work. And you could change how many are in the sky at any given time, etc. But there are solutions to these problems that we could deal with without rapidly transforming the way that we live our lives. And that much is true. Nick H says, does Trump flip Portage County, Wisconsin, and or Muskegon County, Michigan? I don't really have high hopes for Michigan. I'm not going to lie. Portage County, Wisconsin, that's a maybe, but that just seems like titanium tilt D in like every race. But it's possible. It's possible. Let's see. Polite Rude Guy says we need to outlaw strip clubs, porn, and OnlyFans. This is true. 100% true. There's no use for any of it. And our society was much better before the days of high-speed internet because of that. And we could talk about all those effects, all the adverse effects, etc. I'll just refer you to the Doyle dissertation for now, because that's about as detailed as you're going to get. It's about, 90 minutes or so. Talks about pretty much everything, the way it alters people's brains. It makes them subservient. It makes them weak. And as a result, it makes them easily more controllable. There's no defense for this. I mean, there's just none. You could say victimless crimes are an issue, but the weakest individual in a society does end up affecting everybody. There is no real victimless crime when it comes down to it, when you analyze the chain of events. There's a reason why we've had legislative morality in this country for years and years on end. They say you can't do it. You absolutely can. I mean, a tax on cigarettes or whatever, that's legislative morality. If you're talking about these emission guidelines for cars, whatever, that's legislative morality to a certain extent, even if it largely comes from the left, because it talks about, okay, here's what we're going to do to make the air cleaner for everybody, even though somebody themselves is just barely affecting the air. Even if they, have a 5 MPG car or whatever, it's going to barely affect the environment at large. But the more people you have doing something, the weaker it's going to make society. So it does play a role. And a lot of people are really uncomfortable with this notion, and maybe less so now than they were like 4 years ago, of like using the government to actually achieve goals on the right, because they're going to get hit with the labels of like authoritarian, fascist, whatever. But they hit like libertarians, they hit Ron Paul and all those people with those labels already, to the point where it's not even going to make that much of a difference in the way that you're perceived, except you're just going to actually be going out there and getting things done, and they're going to work and they're going to make society better to the point where you're just going to become more popular. Like, oh, the government can't do anything. So let's just like let everybody up to their own devices and see what happens. It's not exactly working out to their advantage. John Waffle H2P says, I just got another ad of Brandon begging for money. Is he broke as an incumbent? I don't know if he's broke, but he's not exactly doing that well. In terms of like his standing, because from what I can tell, he's already like exhausting a lot of money on ads as we speak. And we even saw that with one of the super chatters that said they had a DeSantis ad on this video or on this live stream, or not a DeSantis, a Biden ad. So it's like, yeah, he's clearly got some issue with his image. And the more money he does spend, is it even going to have that positive impact? Like, you look at all of those advertisements he's putting up on YouTube, they had to remove the dislike button off of this website just because of the fact that Biden ads or pro-Biden content was just disliked to oblivion. So now he's paying like TikTok influencers, or so they say, to like cover for him. And like, that's been proven now, and it's not even working, and everybody's just laughing at these people. So obviously those are like anecdotal evidences of it. But either way, the bottom line remains the same, that he has an image problem, and he does have a lot of people trying to cover for him, to the point where if he's going to be spending a ridiculous amount of money, is it going to sway that many people? Not entirely sure. GK Chesterton says, you like DeSantis's law on the death row for pedos? Yeah, I did like that bill, actually, because I'm objective when it comes down to this. People think I'm just like, oh, I have to defend Trump on everything. Can't give DeSantis credit and anything else. And it's like, I will say the reason why DeSantis is signing a lot of legislation that's solid is because he knows what he's doing. He is going to raise his profile. He's trying to raise his support. There's a reason why he didn't sign a 6-week abortion ban before his reelection bid, but he did it after, where he's potentially entering a primary. But still, he gets credit for it, of course. Of course he gets credit for it. I do like that bill. I saw, if anything, it didn't go far enough, but credit where it's due, I guess. Benson X says, what if he chose Sean Duffy for RV appeal? What's RV? Like Rust Belt? I assume RRB appeal. I mean, I don't know. Duffy's all right. I just don't know much about him. Like, how would he act on a debate stage? Did he outperform in his district? Is he like likable? I don't know that much about him from what I can tell. But I mean, picking somebody from the Rust Belt is not something I'd be opposed to. And you get that state of Wisconsin locked up potentially if you pick the right person from Wisconsin. That would be a massive W in and of itself. But Ron Johnson's not going to be that guy either, because I know he's like the senator from there, but it's like, yeah, he's not going to be the guy. He's not that likable from what I can tell. He still won because his opponent was bad. And like, he's just not, for some reason, people just don't like him all that much, but they do like him enough to reelect him over somebody who's awful, even if they do outspend him and outraise him. So Garrett Vranikar says GOP should pick up on natural foods like free range, non-GMO, and organic. It's a great counter to processed vegan foods. Amish farms are a blessing. And it's like, yeah, why do we seed this ground of like traditional cuisine and eating, like these grass-fed meats, this high quality protein, your like actual organic fruits and vegetables, etc. Like, that typically seems like it's like regarded to be a hippie thing, or it was for a while. But now you're starting to see more people, especially like on the online right, the traditionalist side of things, they're starting to pivot more to that, which is a very good thing. And I think that they should pick up on it. I don't know how, if you're running in like electoral politics, how you'd navigate that. But I mean, if you do have somebody like Trump that brings it up, or somebody that's transformational, even Tucker Carlson talking about it can go a long way, or at least it would have when he was on Fox News, because he had the ability to shift the Overton window on some things. And that's one of the things that he would talk about. And if it's something like that, if it's something like dieting, or just like getting rid of harmful oils in foods, or incentivizing large fast food companies to actually cook healthier, even if it's going to cut their profit margins by 5% or whatever, It's like, yeah, there's no reason for that not to happen. Instead, the left, which you would expect to care about the well-being if they were honest or principled, which they're not, they don't talk about this type of thing. Maybe, you're 30 years ago, your honest liberals were talking about it, but now they're not. Now they're just corporate slaves, essentially. And you will never see them attack these large corporations who are, woke or whatever, even though they would have attacked them 20, 30 years ago for legitimate reasons, just like they attacked the forever wars for legitimate reasons. But then Trump comes along and he says, well, we're going to bring our troops home, put America first. Then they become the biggest shills for the media industrial complex. And they say, oh, I didn't agree with Bush on everything, but he was such a great man and an honorable president. And I prefer him over somebody like Donald Trump. And it's like, yeah, okay. See how it works like that? See how it works? Ike's Political Minute says, why did you make an individual video about Haley but not other GOP candidates? Well, she's more prominent. Like, do you want me to talk about Hutchinson for an hour? Like, I'd get bored. Do you want me to talk about, like, who else is in the race? Like Tim Scott? I've already talked about him on a live stream. Vivek is intriguing. Like I've said, he's more like the Andrew Yang of this cycle than anything else. He's not like a viable candidate, but he can bring some intriguing positions to the table. Still some question marks about his past. Like, where did this guy come from? Did he have some ties to these organizations? He claims he doesn't. Like the whole WEF thing, he's like trying to push back on that. But I don't know. What I will say is that it's like there's a lot that we don't know about the guy, but he's probably going to get a cabinet position. He has said some interesting things, I will say. He said some interesting things that do resonate with me. So we'll see. Mr. Jimmy says thoughts on Harry Sisson being a paid DNC plant. I mean, these people, like I said, and I think I covered this after the super chat was sent in, but you have a lot of people out there who are being paid by the Biden campaign to produce content that like is covering for Biden. And these are insufferable people. They're kind of like essentially dollar store Dash Dabrowski, who was like that crazy guy who kind of looked like Beto O'Rourke's like crackhead son, essentially, and would do those like crazy videos. He'd be like making these crazy facial expressions. He'd be like, big news. And like, he'd just like say, so Donald Trump did this crazy thing. And like everybody laughed at it. Like it was content. It was likely semi-satire, even if the guy was on the left. Like he didn't want to be an actor before that or something. And it's like now they have these people running around and doing the TikToks, which is funny because that could be something to increase the reach if they were not so insufferable. And you can't have that on the right these days because of the fact that if you're a conservative and you post anything on TikTok, you could be a libertarian, you could be a normie con, you could be very milquetoast. You're still going to get banned instantly because that's how the algorithm works, mass reporting, etc. And it's just kind of useless. So that brings us to this question from Manny. Should the GOP start paying TikTokers like Democrats? And I mean, they can't do that because they get banned. I mean, I never got banned, but I never posted a whole lot or not nearly as frequently, didn't get as big. But if they did that, which again, they could have, and they could pay influencers. I don't know how that's going to move the needle either, because it does seem like a lot of the people that are astroturfed do tend to have that vibe and are to a large degree insufferable. Now, you can promote certain people's content that could actually move the needle. And we do need people like that in the sphere. And I think we have a lot of them. We have a lot of talent already. Not saying we couldn't have more, but it's like, I don't think TikTok is going to be the end game to spread these conservative ideals, because you just get banned from it. Now the left will do it and they'll be fine because they'll go out there and they'll be protected by the algorithm for some reason or another. And they'll be able to reach their audience that already agrees with them in their resist lib echo chamber. Let them do it. I don't care. But it is what it is. They're just desperate for positive press at this point. And if anything, it doesn't move the needle. Like these guys even went out there and basically said in a podcast that, oh, we just say whatever they tell us to say. And we're not going to go out there and we're not going to counter signal the Democrats, even if we have our disagreements with them. And it's just like, okay. Polite Rude Guy says the Speaker of the Texas House is a rhino. He has failed us. I didn't see what he did, but there are a lot of rhinos in the Texas GOP. There's a lot of good people too, especially in like the mechanical aspect of it, the party leadership. It's definitely a mixed bag, though. You have a lot of weak people. You have a lot of rhinos. You have a lot of neocons, your old Bushite individuals. But I mean, there are decent people. Like you have Sid Miller as our agricultural commissioner. He's solid. You have Ken Paxton as AG. He won big despite having scandals. You look at pretty much everybody statewide except Abbott. They're doing pretty solidly. But then in the state legislature, you do have a lot of people who are bought and paid for by the donors. And as a result, that's not a good thing. We need more people that are solid in, for sure. Garrett Vranikar says, could Trump flip Dauphin in Pennsylvania? I don't know. He doesn't need to win, so I'm going to lean towards no anyways. Anthony says, Gingrich said that Michelle Obama is a threat to run. If that happens, it's a serious problem because she has a shot in winning. I mean, if Republicans played their cards right and got their hands dirty with that, they probably would, do very well in the Rust Belt if they were able to. I mean, Michelle Obama is somebody that said a lot of off-color statements about white people, about men, about essentially Trump's core base. And I feel like that could energize a lot of Republicans if that's true. Also, the youth vote. She ruined the school lunches. So if she's the nominee, she might do not as good with the younger voters. Who knows? But what I will say is she's not going to run. She's not going to be the nominee. You're probably more likely to see Hillary Clinton as the nominee in 2024 than Michelle Obama. You're not going to see either of them, so it doesn't matter, but that's the way it goes. Nick H says the Biden campaign literally just bought ads in Florida today. Yeah, wasting their money. That's no different from Donald Trump going out there and spending money in Oregon and New Mexico back in 2020. Or actually, he didn't do that. That's what Brad Parscale did, who was a disastrous campaign manager who was strung out on drugs by the time the election cycle really started to ramp up and roll around. So the Kupithican Age, his thoughts on the cringe Dark Brandon meme, it's cringeworthy. And again, that's co-opted as well. Everything they co-opt from is really from us, because the first people to say that were people on the right who were ironically calling Biden base. They were like, oh, Dark Brandon banned abortion. Catholic Joe goes out there and within 2 years, Roe v. Wade gets overturned. And it's like, it's funny. That was the original meme. And then you have the left co-opts it and they make like these memes of Biden with laser eyes and they have him talking about, oh, everyone that opposes me, I'll take down the evil fascists who oppose democracy and all this stuff. And it's like, this is just disastrous. This isn't funny. It doesn't make Biden seem more appetizing. It literally makes him seem worse, and it makes them seem worse because they're unoriginal. And it confirms the truth that all left-wing memes are either stolen from the right and made worse, or they are just walls of text that include every single buzzword they can fit in them. That's it. That's what it comes down to. Mr. Jimmy says, thoughts on the North Carolina Supreme Court making an 11-3 map? Great. They are definitely taking that state back as much as possible. Benson X says, it meant Rust Belt. Autocorrect strikes again. Well, I knew what you said. Thanks for the super chat. Let's see. Byron Marble says Ron Johnson all day over super rhinos like Voss and Ryan. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been solid. Absolutely. Ryan is useless. He's more unlikable. I don't know much about Robin Voss. I know that he had a feud with Trump. From what I can tell, he almost lost his primary. He's not really seen as all that great. But Mr. Clean says now that Trump has experienced firsthand the swamp, he has every reason to go full nuclear on them in a second term. Well, they always omit the fact that Trump's second term was supposed to be a lot better than his first term because he would have less of a reason to be measured, to get reelected or whatever. And as a result, well, he never got it. But had he gotten it, it likely would have been much better than the first. He would have been a lot stronger on big tech. He would have been probably would have fired Fauci, which they say that he wouldn't have done, or they got mad at him for not doing it. And there were a lot of things that he was supposed to do that he never got around to because it was an election year. He had to get reelected, etc., you name it. So Joshua Mills says, thoughts on the Crowder ex-wife situation. Bad take on his part, or is the situation being overblown? It's not a good look for him. I'm not like making videos on it because I just don't like, I don't think it's really like something that I feel the need to speak on, but it's a sad situation. It is. And it doesn't make him look good. Now, are they taking things out of context? I don't know what context that would look good in. I mean, relationships definitely get ugly. A lot of bad things get said on many sides, but still, he doesn't emerge from that looking good. And I'm not going to say that people shouldn't like watch his content. I'm not the biggest fan of his. If I was, I'd still watch him. Like, it's not like something that I would say I'm going to cut ties. Like, I can't morally support this guy, but that's not a good look. It's not a good look whatsoever. And it just, that's all there is to say. I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and cry about the situation. Who's a horrible person, which again, he's clearly got some issues. He's got some demons. And I pray for both of them. I really do. And that's all you can do. Because he seems to have a lot of stuff going on there. That tape did not make him look good, even if some things were omitted. Now, I will say, why were these made public? Because this is a court case that's private. Why were these sent to these like left-wing organizations? I think it was Media Matters, or it was something like Media Matters. And why did they make them public? Like, it's clear that was motivated by something other than, oh, this is like an abusive relationship. So Gary Vranikar says, do you think that trans kids will be a major issue in 2024? Will that sway more people who don't pay much attention to politics to our side? Well, it's something a lot of people disagree with. Now, like, how do you make that a wedge issue? I don't know. I know that Trump having it a part of his platform to end genital mutilation for those under the age of 18 is a good thing. And if he's attacked on it by the left, that's going to make them look bad. But it's probably not going to be a top 10 issue. From what I could tell, probably not going to be a top 10 issue. Let's see. All right. Well, that's enough for super chats. Now I could kind of briefly talk about the Bud Light stuff, but it's like the sales fell 26%. Not like 5%, 26%. And now they're getting hit from all sides. And then they release an advertisement that's like talking about, or it basically had more of like a country aesthetic to it. They're trying to like pivot back to their user base or subscriber base, or just people that buy their products. And either way, it's not working. And they're getting hated even more so now. And the sales are dropping even more. 21% in one report, 26% in another report. I mean, how many reports do they keep having to put out that showcase this being a problem for people to understand, well, maybe a boycott actually worked for the first time? And that's a good thing, but we can't exactly take our foot off the gas. And that's what I said in my video about it. And looking from the recent returns on their product, well, they're doing even worse now than they were by the time I put the video out. Like the first couple weeks, they only dropped 11%. Now they're dropping 26%. This is over an advertisement, a partnership. Like, they're not, from what I understand, they're not even selling like beer cans that have this transgender individual's face on them. Like, that was a custom can sent for a partnership. And already, even though they don't have the face on the can, imagine how much the sales would be falling if that was the case. But even just that certain thing, 26% of the consumer base drops off because of that. And it works. These boycotts can work. Now, there should not be the end goal to end woke capitalism. I understand that. We're going to need some sort of woke tax or something of that sort. But I will also say that in the meantime, where we don't have that, we are going to need to go out there and, organize these boycotts. The left wins by whining. They win by acting like SJWs. I'm not saying we act as insufferable as they do. I'm not saying that we go out there and yell and scream at the sky and dye our hair blue and act like these mentally disabled individuals. But what I am saying is don't take our foot off the gas, be active. If these are the people that are essentially molding society, imagine what we would do if we even just kind of, got our hands dirty just a little bit. So that's my take on it. Like we could do a lot with a little, but we don't. We lie down, we whine about eluctability. We get mad the second anybody does something. And what happens? Oh, we continue to lose. And we try to pander to voters that are on the left and hate us, and we try to outwoke them. It just doesn't work. It never works, and it never will work. So that's the way it is. Sam Madsen says, what does 2022 look like if Trump was reelected? Better for us in the Rust Belt? I would honestly say it would depend on his approval rating. I mean, you probably would have some inflation. I don't think it'd be nearly as bad. We'd be much better off abroad. His approval would probably be in the mid to high 40s. And I would say we would do much better in the Rust Belt. We did better in the Rust Belt in 2018 than we did in 2022. Now, I don't know if it'd be enough to, it probably would be enough to save Ron Johnson, if anything, still, even though Trump would have been in office. But yeah, if Trump was in the White House, his candidates and the candidates that were aligned with him probably would have done a little bit better, even in some places, even if his approval rating was where Biden's was, because that's how these things work. That's how turnout works, because there's nothing at stake for a lot of people in rural Michigan that only paid attention to politics for Trump. Because you look at that Whitmer, despite everything she's done over the past 4 years, does better in 2022 than she does in 2018. So yeah, I think it'd be better for us. I don't think it'd be by much, but it would almost certainly be better for us for sure. And we would have probably not retaken the House, but we probably would have maybe saved a governorship or two. I don't know. Polite Rude Guy says, I'm trying to start an AI company. I don't know how that would be done. I don't really know what goes into that, but AI is definitely something that's scary. I mean, you see all these like song covers that are like AI, and it's like Kanye sings this song and it sounds exactly like Kanye, but it's AI. It's not actually his voice. But the way that they're able to take people and like make these AIs, it's kind of cool, but it's also very dangerous, and it could definitely have some impacts. It's like deep fake technology. Like, I'm not even sure that Tucker clip that we played earlier was a deep fake or AI, but the fact that it looked like it, or like it could be, and if it was, like, I'd believe it, like that is kind of scary, I will say. But that's pretty much it. Let's see. Any other super chats? This will be the last call. Then we'll end the stream. We've been going for about 90 minutes now. So we'll be back with a video tomorrow, but we'll see. Any other people in chat or any super chats that we need to get to, and then we will head out probably in 2 minutes or so. Jeremy G says, let's go Lakers. Thanks for the super chat. I'm not really sure about the Lakers. Let's see. Honestly, if Biden didn't tap into, there's so many reasons about the midterms, because if Biden didn't tap into those emergency oil reserves, Democrats would have likely done a lot worse. And that probably saved them more in some places than the Dobbs v. Jackson decision did. And that's kind of why I didn't talk about it a whole lot, if at all, in the documentary. And maybe I could do a video about the impact. And we've talked about abortion recently as well, and how Republicans should navigate it. But aside from maybe a few points here and there in some gubernatorial elections, they lost by like 10. I don't think that it really impacted very much. I really don't. Like, Democrats were energized on it for sure. And they will be energized on it in 2024 for sure as well. But that has more to do with Republicans just not fighting back effectively on it. Mr. Jimmy says thoughts on the Montana Republicans banning a transgender from speaking. When did that happen? When did that happen? Oh, they banned a return to House floor. Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely surprised that they elected one in the first place. That'd be my takeaway. I'm very surprised that they even have one in their chambers. You had like a Bernie aligned Democrat who was transgender run for governor in a blue wave year in Vermont, and they lost by like 15 to Phil Scott. And that was in like Vermont. So the fact that Montana even has one is kind of surprising to me. And it seemed like they did I don't know much about it, but it seemed like they did the right thing in that situation. So those are my thoughts. The Kupithican age is if Clinton won in 2016, would she have won in 2020? Probably not, because I do think that COVID definitely played a role. Who knows what would have happened, though? You know, you have like one thing happen in history. It's a butterfly effect. For all we know, we wouldn't have the United States of America anymore, even though probably we would. But I don't want to think about that reality. I really don't. Republicans would have a lot more Senate seats now, more likely than not, though. So I will say that would be a good thing that would have came out of that. But other than that, that's like about it. We'd be done if Clinton ended up winning back in 2016. So we really did dodge a bullet. And definitely the Supreme Court was on the verge. So we saved that as well. Based Cato says, why do leftoids always ask you to define woke every time we call them out for it? I figure they're just out of NPC talking points. Well, they're the ones that came up with the term in the first place. So I'm not entirely sure why they're asking us to define the term. They're the ones that said we're woke. They said stay woke. Stay woke was like the 2016 BLM hashtag. And now they're like, you can't say woke. Woke isn't real. Woke is a pejorative used by the right. It's because it's just a dumb word that people make fun of you for. That's why. Like the stay woke thing was like a meme. I think even before that, it was like conspiracists or people that would talk about conspiracies. They would say, oh, stay woke, stay vigilant, stay whatever. And that was more of a right-wing thing. Then it became a left-wing thing because they're the ones that actually engaged in actual untrue conspiracies like the whole BLM narrative. And then they went stay woke. That's their thing. And then eventually woke just is used now to describe lunacy that comes out of the left on social issues. And it is kind of like an effective political thing to use. Like, oh, they're just being woke. They're just being woke. And now you have people on the left that say, no, we're like the non-woke left now to like differentiate themselves. So yeah. Garrett Vranikar says, leftoids always say, how does that personally affect you? A decent rebuttal might be, why is the economy an issue? Doesn't that affect everyone? Well, like I said earlier in the stream, a lot of issues do affect society at large. The weakness of one individual affects everybody. And you might not exactly see that on a full scale, but neither would you if you have like a car that is not like emission compliant, that gets like 2 miles per gallon and burns a ridiculous amount of chemicals and pollution or whatever they want to say into the sky. And that's going to affect the environment next to nothing. But if everybody does that, it's going to affect it quite a bit. And you do have a lot of problems with modern society that can be chalked up to poor personal decisions made under the guise of freedom. And a lot of people just don't understand this. And as a result, what happens? We just keep going down this spiraling rabbit hole of, oh no, let live and let live. Everything is fine as long as it doesn't affect the other person. But every action taken by a member of society impacts the other person some way or another. Make Australia British again. Says, any tips on getting your YouTube channel up and running, Patreons and whatnot? I'm really struggling. I know it's early days, but well, here's what I tell people. And this might be vague advice, but this is advice that applies towards everybody. Make content people are going to want to see. Make content that people are going to want to click on. Make it unique. You know, make it something that's differential, bring something to the table, fill a niche. And if you can't exactly do that, I don't believe that, you know, you're going to be able to make your channel big, barring some rare circumstances. So that's the way I see it. Now, I don't know what your channel's about, but in terms of pretty much everybody that says, how do I start a channel? How do I, you know, get involved in this sphere or that sphere, or produce content and make a living off of YouTube? And it's like, you have to go out there and make content people are going to want to see that is kind of different than a lot of other people's content. So you have to fill that specific void. Sam Madsen says, does Trump flip back Saginaw County? He might, even if he loses Michigan. I mean, he gained percentage-wise there in 2020, so it's possible. But we'll see. But all right, guys, we're going to end the stream. Like the stream before you go. Subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss another video or stream. And I'll see you guys in a video tomorrow, and then I'll stream again on Thursday. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.